Now, as you would all expect, we're here to talk about coffee today, but I want to shift the focus slightly now to a product that most baristas will work with just as much as coffee, and that's milk. In the Australian market, coffee is the #1 consumed beverage out of home. And if we consider then that more than 95% of all espresso-based coffees are made with milk, then you can see how significant it is that we have quality milk in this industry. According to Dairy Australia, milk consumption has grown strongly over the last 2 years and at very high levels, thanks in no small part to the rapid expansion of Australia's coffee culture. And why is that? Why is milk so dominant in Australia's industry? Well, it all began pre-war, mid-1990s, when instant coffee drinkers would add that dash of milk to their coffee granules. And then along came the wonderful post-war Italian immigrants who lovingly reproduced their strong, smooth and rich chocolatey espresso. But this style just happened to be the preferred option for Australian coffee drinkers who grew up with coffee, instant coffee and milk. Now known, as we all know it, as the flat white, this drink has become widely accepted by a range of new audiences, especially in the UK and the US, thanks to expatriate Aussies and Kiwis. Another key factor to our love of milk, as much as it relates to coffee, is the quality of produce. Australians are lucky to be the beneficiaries of a climate that pertains to favourable dairy farming conditions, and one which is still largely pasture-based. Today, the Australian dairy industry is a $13 billion farm, export and manufacturing industry, and Australia's third largest agricultural sector. As coffee continues to grow and evolve, so does our dairy industry. And now we're seeing a lot of dairy farmers and suppliers work with cafe owners and baristas to really nurture a product that complements Australia's discerning coffee taste and our consistent love for milk-based coffees in whatever form that may take. Ross Nicholls, back in 2001, began developing a milk-on-tap system, actually, that doses a precise amount of milk into a jug via a sensor system. So this system has not only revolutionised, I guess, the barista's workstation, but also transformed milk dispensing in terms of sustainability. Fast forward 5 years and the juggler, as it's called, has become a widespread success across Australia. So Ross, what would you say in terms of sustainability? How has the juggler really made an impact in that?
We just had a little milestone. We've been more or less counting the amount of bottles that haven't been used in the cafe industry based on the amount of customers using our machine, us roughly knowing the amount of bladders being used, and we just crossed about 1 million bottles not used in cafes, fairly recently. So that's a reasonably significant thing for where we are, I suppose, at this point in time.
Obviously, we're familiar with single origin in the coffee world, but what does that actually mean in milk? I know that's quite a new terminology. I'm hoping you can explain.
When we select the Jersey cows, they're from close by. There's a couple of factors in a single origin beast as well. Of course, a Jersey cow only produces a smaller yield, but they're higher in fat and protein. And we test the quality of that when it comes in, and generally, from a Jersey cow, it's pretty good most of the time. That also gives our baristas comfort knowing that they're getting it from a high quality, a low yielding animal, and it's of single origin. They're pure Jersey farms as well, or herds.
Fantastic. And what would you say then is the real main difference in that sort of production opposed to other milk sourcing?
The milk doesn't travel very far. We're close by, so it comes straight off farm, straight to our processing plant, and then it's on the truck and it's out to our customers within 12 hours of milking.
I guess how would you say that milk really can impact on the overall flavour of a coffee?
Well, milk's not milk, like all things are not all the same. And so while as a general comment in Australia, we've got some fantastic drinking milks and they've got some reasonable similarities, they don't necessarily all perform or have the same functional attributes in a given blend or a given cafe environment. There's some obvious stuff. The creaminess or the dairy note is probably the key thing that is the main influence, assuming you've got, I guess, what I'd call the hygiene factors. You've got to have a decent stretch, you've got to have a good mouthfeel. You've got to stretch okay and have a silky bubble. It's about how it complements the bean. The bean's the hero. We don't want the milk to overpower it, so that creaminess or dairy note is probably the challenge. So one of the challenges of the higher fat milks, for example, or the Jerseys, they're great drinking milks. They can have a very strong flavour, but if they're overpowering the bean, that's a challenge. Flip side, if you've got a very strong bean, that might be the right vehicle.
The last 5 years as well, there's been great interest in exporting Australian milk overseas, especially to Greater China. So why is there such strong interest for Australian produce?
I think in China, they've obviously got the challenge that they don't have enough capacity in their farming system to produce the dairy and especially the protein, which is what they need for their own consumption. So I think that's obviously advantageous to us, and the proximity of how close we are to Asia, so we can quickly get it there. But I think also it's just trust, really, Sarah, and we've seen a lot of that recently over some troubles that have been in the dairy industry. People want to trust that what they're getting is authentic and it's real, and it's less processed. It's something that they can believe in, and Australia is really well blessed with, as Bill was mentioning earlier, some great farms around the Victorian area, some lush green grass, and I think the Chinese consumers can see that, and that's what the attraction is. And it'll be interesting, like as the coffee culture expands into Asia, how are they going to take their coffee? If you think about when coffee came from Italy to Australia. Italians not as prominent with milk. Australia added a lot of milk to their coffee. What's Asia going to do with their milk and their coffee? So it's a good question.